Thank you for joining us in our virtual fireside chat with Dave Doig, Director of Grants and Community Initiatives from Vancouver Foundation, and Malcolm Klotz, Founder and CTO of Gen3. Moderated by Mariana Katz, Managing Partner of Gen3, they will share Vancouver Foundation's impact story and how they successfully rolled out their Community Response Fund in record time.
All right, so we'll get started. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I'm very pleased. We have people here from the US, Canada, Ireland, Spain, and the UK. It's probably quite late in Europe, so thanks for joining us at such a late night hour in your day. And we're delighted to have you join us to talk about a very special project we launched in partnership with Dave and the Vancouver Foundation. So just a bit of housekeeping. If you send your questions, I will be reviewing them through the session and bringing them up as they're relevant. And if not, we'll save them to the end. We won't be speaking for a whole hour. We hope to have more of a conversation. So please do send those questions in, and we'll get to them as we go. So without further ado, there's Malcolm. We'll introduce you to Dave. We were just chatting before we got on Zoom, and it's very cold in Toronto, so I'm wearing a thick sweater, but Dave is in Vancouver, and he's wearing very spring pink today. He said he wanted to be more chipper at this time. He's got 30 years of experience working in the not-for-profit and health sectors and charities. He's been with the Vancouver Foundation for close to 10 years, and he's leading the process redesign around responsive grant-making that the Vancouver Foundation has embarked upon, and we've been working with them for quite a few years. They're more looking at system change rather than individual projects in terms of their perspective. He lived 20 years in Toronto and worked for the AIDS Foundation as well as the Canadian Cancer Society, but it was with the AIDS Foundation, Committee of Toronto, that he really got passionate around social justice work, and somehow I'll have to hear the story he got from there to Vancouver. So thank you, Dave, for joining us and for being our partner and allowing us to be your partner in your digital transformation for the last few years. I have with me, good morning, afternoon, evening, we got it all. I also have with me Malcolm, who's my business partner, and Malcolm has been working with the SmartSimple platform for close to 15 years. He's our founder for Gen3, and he's built the company from the ground up. Gen3 is the partner for SmartSimple to build complex solutions. So we have here present many of our clients, including the Ontario Trillium Foundation, the Coca-Cola Foundation, BC Arts Council, and others. So thank you for participating. Malcolm has a development background, and he is happiest being in front of clients, designing and solving problems. That's where Malcolm is always happier. When we have to do big business things, he's like, oh, can I just go back to fixing problems for clients? So our clients love working with him, and we have a culture of always listening to the problems that our clients are facing and being there to solve them. So without further ado, we'll get right into hearing from Dave about the Vancouver Foundation, your mission. Just tell us a little bit about who you are today.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on your busy schedules. I hope everyone is well in these interesting times. Vancouver Foundation is one of Canada's oldest community foundations, and we're quite unique in that we have a province-wide mandate where most community foundations will have a municipal or regional mandate. We're as common a community foundation as you might find, with a variety of granting streams, donor advised, designated, field of interest. And we, like many community foundations, tend to operate from community-informed decision-making. So we're one of, I should know this, 50 community foundations in British Columbia, and one of 191 or two. I might get my community foundation membership taken away from me. I don't know the number, across Canada. So very strong community foundation network in our country, and glad to be part of it. Mariana, you're muted.
Thank you. So what are some of the challenges that arose when COVID, the situation erupted, and what challenges as well as risks and limitations were part of what you were faced with?
I guess the biggest challenge was not exactly knowing how things were going to play out and what was at stake. So Vancouver has a large international airport. We are Canada's hub to some of Europe, as well as certainly the Pacific countries. We were one of the first cities in the country to record confirmed cases. There was a large outbreak just across the border from us in Washington State. So at the beginning, it was really trying to figure out what might happen and what our response might be. And then quite early on, in the pandemic, when talk of lockdown became quite common across the country, our attention turned to what that might mean for organizations that we support financially and how they would continue to operate and how they would continue to support vulnerable clients. We were concerned that people get the most accurate information to help them make informed choices, and that they received the support they needed to still connect socially and economically if they could. And so it was like everyone else, just trying to figure it out as we go along. Our VP like to call it building the bicycle as we're riding it, and it certainly felt like that many times.
Thank you. I'll turn to Malcolm a little bit. We're just gathering kind of how the two organizations came together. Malcolm, how long have you been working with the Vancouver Foundation before COVID erupted, and what were some of the things that were challenges and things that were resolved before all this happened?
We've been working with Vancouver Foundation for probably a little over 3 years now. We had a very interesting journey with Vancouver. We actually spent a significant amount of time trying to figure out how we were going to build quite a significant workflow that they did present, as well as some challenges around managing their funds and essentially their other systems, which is now Salesforce as well as Foundation Power. So we spent a lot of time talking about it. I think eventually when we started configuring the build, Dave really played an instrumental role in actually architecting how the workflows would be designed, and our core team, Caitlin Davis, was responsible, working very closely with Dave, and still is today. Caitlin works very closely with Dave on continual initiatives, and I still work with Dave on the integration side of things, because as you say, I just can't get my hands out of the details. But it's been an ongoing relationship, which actually significantly helped us adjust quickly to Dave and the Foundation's requests.
Thank you. So here we are. I figured it was February, March when all this hit, because I remember I was set to go to Peak in Seattle. So that's your side of the world, and everything got canceled last minute. And I know BC was British Columbia was started earlier than the East Coast did. So what presented as a challenge, because I know you came together with other organizations, how did that happen, who led it, and what was the fund that was created?
We quickly were in communication with some of the other large funders that operate in the Lower Mainland and our Fraser Valley regions, and that is the United Way of the Lower Mainland, Vancity, our province's largest credit union. They also run a community foundation, and the City of Vancouver. And so 4 partners came together to look at options and formed a governance committee and created a fund. And very quickly, quite a sizable fund, about $6 million to start. And we, as I said, weren't exactly sure what the funding approach should be. So looked around, we looked very closely at the Seattle Foundation and the partnership that they had formed and the approach that they were taking. And what we liked about that and what we borrowed from that was a combination of we knew organizations were already stressed, so we didn't want a lengthy or cumbersome application process. So we liked that the partnership in Seattle had decided to allow organizations to signal their interest in being considered for funding, but not have to apply for funding. And that that partnership also put together a community advisory panel to identify organizations that they thought would play pivotal roles in the community's response to COVID. And our governance committee did the same. So structurally, we tried to be proactive by identifying organizations we thought were pivotal, supporting vulnerable populations, developed 4 funding priorities, and allowed organizations to signal their interest in being funded. So, if we've not thanked the Seattle partnership, let me take the opportunity now to thank you for inspiring us in our response.
Thank you, Dave. So we know how challenging it can be to have not-for-profits come together, create governance, decide on priorities, and design a granting stream. We work with clients, and it takes us many months working together with them, helping them think about their processes, their workflows, their criteria, how this translates into a system build. What do you think happened that made you be able to come together with 3 very significant other organizations and make a decision so quickly, put money forward, and come up with criteria for the new granting stream? That's pretty amazing.
We worked with all 3 of these partners before.
Okay.
In a variety of contexts. So high level of trust, high level of, I think, shared vision for community-led response to COVID. Quite easy to put the partnership together, actually, I think, in the Lower Mainland. What made it on the tech, as the person who had to build the bicycle as others were riding it, what made it challenging with the partnerships is we're all very different funders. So Vancouver Foundation is a charitable funder. We're constrained by who we can fund in ways that the city and the United Way and Vancity were not. So that made for some interesting discussions on what types of organizations should be prioritized for funding. We tend to fund mostly registered charities, whereas Vancity funds many social enterprises. The United Way of the Lower Mainland funds nonprofits of all stripes. So some interesting discussions around the table, even before we got into the mechanics of granting.
Excellent. Malcolm, can you share with us a bit about how we came with SmartSimple to offer pro bono work to all those SmartSimple clients during this difficult time?
Well, that's a very easy answer. Actually, the initiative was brought forward by you, Mariana, and something that we had discussed in terms of a way to give back to the community. And this is just one of those opportunities when we're able to reach out to our clients, and specifically because we have knowledge of their configuration and with the agility of the SmartSimple platform, we knew that we could actually affect some real change as long as there was focused vision, and that was definitely the story here with Vancouver Foundation. So it's really a call out to our team I already mentioned Caitlin as well as Kelly Zacher, who really helped the Vancouver Foundation initially kind of figure out exactly what it was that they wanted to do. And because we had such strong knowledge of their processes, and again, taking into account just the way we had configured the platform, even down to integration, because this really touched even integration into the Foundation Power platform. We had to make some slight tweaks, but we were able to respond really quickly, and really that's kudos to our team and Dave as well for being very well organized on both sides.
I'll just add to that we this was a joint venture with SmartSimple, and as clients have reached out to us, those who had platforms built many years ago by SmartSimple were helped by them, and those who were being working with us were helped by us because we each knew their platforms, so we could help you faster and get up live a lot faster. So really, this is a joint effort, and there were many people in the SmartSimple team, like Eric Lauer and others, who helped out a number of other clients. So Dave, here's the crux of the matter. How did you decide between all four organizations, because not everybody was on the SmartSimple platform, to go on this technology versus others?
A couple of the partners that we worked with had seen our system before in a granting partnership with we did. And I have to say, I didn't get the sense the other partners would fight us for the opportunity to host the grant making. So everyone was pretty delighted when we volunteered to host, and we were pretty confident in our technical abilities. One of the primary reasons we chose SmartSimple as a platform to begin with was its flexibility to leverage and repurpose existing fields and workflows, and for us to be able to do a lot of that work ourselves. And so we were quite confident going into this that we'd be able to launch quickly and then to evolve over time if we needed to. And so, as you said, it was kind of mid-March when things really started getting serious, and we were starting, we made our first grants at the end of March, and we continue to make grants today.
That's fantastic. How many grants have you done so far? Do you know the number?
We're up to, thanks to list views, we're up to 227 approved grants, just over 8.5 million Canadian.
That's incredible. Incredible. Thank you. So Malcolm, when you were approached, because you knew Vancouver for many years, what are some of the challenges in terms of getting this up and running in 2 weeks? And clearly not just to do 10 grants, but we just heard the number to date, and I'm sure it's going to continue to grow. And unfortunately, this situation continues to be a challenge for communities. So
I don't think we really had a challenge. I mean, the one thing I have to call out always with Dave is Dave really took it upon himself to truly immerse himself in the platform and really understand the way it works. And there's a lot of things Dave actually is able to do on his own at a director level, which is quite unique in our experience. So when we talk to Dave, it's actually quite an easy conversation for the most part, because he truly understands the platform and how it works. So when Dave initially approached me, I wasn't really concerned, but of course it's easy for me to say because I actually didn't have to do much of the lifting other than the integration, which I knew we could certainly manage with no real issue. But really that was taken over by both Kelly and Caitlin. And in speaking to them on the approach, it was rather straightforward for them. Obviously, some of the key things that we would have needed to assist with is just some of the more deeper process-related items in terms of how the workflows work, making sure that we actually did that work in case nothing else broke. Because that's always really the challenge that you have to deal with, is that when you're inserting a program that quickly and any kind of minor adjustments, you want to make sure that you don't affect the original configuration and the original process flows. And you don't want to throw Vancouver Foundation in a complete end-to-end UAT kind of testing cycle. So, again, just a call out to our team and the fact of They understand the configuration, understood the complexities, and were able to get that configured and inserted within Vancouver's existing flows. I mean, we had some hiccups with the integration, some things that we didn't anticipate, and that's normal. But the team around Vancouver, not just us as well, but including Dave and their support team, they're so responsive. And I remember it was one evening that we probably worked till around 8 or 9 o'clock, at least Eastern Standard Time, just fixing some of the integration pieces. And I think we were good to go. So from a configuration standpoint, Dave, I don't think we had many hiccups, just some minor ones on the integration. But again, it comes down to the fact that Dave and his team are very knowledgeable in the platform, have a very clear vision. And of course, having both Caitlin and Kelly around with their expertise on the platform, as well as Caitlin knowing really Vancouver inside and out, really contributed to this quick turnaround. And I think that's why we made that delineation between, we would help our clients and SmartSimple was helping theirs, because we understood the urgency of this, and there was not a lot of time to get up to speed in terms of learning someone else's processes. So you have to be very careful in these scenarios that you don't affect existing business. As fragile as everything is right now, you want to make sure that you can roll out these changes and hit the ground running. So that's really why we took the approach that we did.
Thank you.
I'd like to give a shout out to Malcolm and his team as well, because a conversation with Dave usually starts off with, "Hi, it's Dave. I think I broke something." So I really appreciate the support. I think one of the two biggest challenges for us, the speed at which we were granting, we started right from the get-go with 3 granting meetings a week. And so and what initially started off as a process where externally no one would need to apply, to one where people would actually submit an expression of interest. We didn't have enough time to configure and test in the backup database. There wasn't enough, because the backup database gets backed up every night. We actually did a lot of things live, and I really don't recommend that as an ongoing practice. And so, as I said, many of my conversations with Malcolm and his team was, "Hey, I was configuring once again in the live database, and I'm not exactly sure I got it right." It didn't, the team at Vancouver Foundation, we were able to test quite quickly for the things we were doing on the new grant type. One of the, because we weren't doing this in the backup database, another challenge was we weren't spending a lot of time testing the existing grant types to see if we were changing anything there. And we found some, in fact, our applicants found some very interesting changes to their, because we had other granting streams running at the same time, found some very interesting changes that we had made unintentionally to their application form. So it was a learning experience for everyone. The speed at which we were rolling out changes, doing most of it in the live database, was something we were not used to at all.
Yeah. And ideally, it's not best practice, but these are special times. So that's what we're all smiling, knowing that we usually wouldn't like to do that. But so now you have this partnership, the system up and running. You've got 270 grants out the door, $8 million. I'm sure you'll be evaluating and monitoring these grants. I don't know their length, but what happens to this when COVID is over, if ever, but hopefully?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Another reason we picked initially SmartSimple as our platform is because we're not a very static grant maker. We like to change our minds frequently. So every couple of years we're sunsetting some streams and rolling out other streams. And this was probably the fastest implementation we've ever done. So from the get-go, we were trying to think strategically about how to set everything up so that we could reuse it in the future as a community response initiative. Vancouver, much like most of the Pacific Coast, is still waiting for our big earthquake to come. We have flood and forest fire season now every year. There are population migrations happening all over the globe. And so thinking more strategically about how we could repurpose the fields, the types, the workflow in the future became a really interesting thought exercise for us. After we launched our first community response granting stream at the end of March, we've launched 2 more. So already we've built and leveraged the existing configuration. So we have 3 COVID response streams operating at the moment. And if and when this winds down, I think we'll be well positioned to start it up again if we need to.
Okay. How long will these grants run for? Usually, are they short term or longer term in terms of?
So the grants themselves are unrestricted operational grants,
Okay.
Not a grant we typically offer.
Yeah.
So no reporting required, and organizations can apply the funding in the best way possible. It's not so much a sense of length of time for the grant. It's now that BC is in its opening up phase, so our initial grants were vital response, keeping organizations afloat, keeping individuals supported, and now everyone's shifting the focus to how do we open up operations and how do we support people to re-engage socially and economically. And so a new source of funding may be required, and so we can evolve our current configuration to do that. Basically, we said we'll keep granting until we're out of money. We continue to actively seek new sources of money. Overall, I think we're up to about $17 million across the 3 streams, and that might go higher. We don't know how long we'll be granting in response to COVID. That's certainly the $1 million question for everyone. But I think we're well positioned to do it.
Okay, thank you. We have a question which I'll get to next from the audience, but I wanted to ask, as this went live and wrapped up, I know Vancouver was in conversations with Malcolm about how do you get that extra support just because you do not have a SmartSimple expert, and by the sounds of it, you're kind of a busy guy to be considering and calling something broke. You have a full-time job, not being a SmartSimple systems administrator. So what were those conversations between Malcolm, between you and Dave, and kind of where are you at now in terms of supporting Vancouver on an ongoing basis as a partner?
Yeah, so absolutely. I mean, so obviously we know Vancouver very well, and we have actually been supporting them for quite some time, but basically a large amount of the questions go into SmartSimple support, or they actually come to Dave first, and that's been a challenge for Dave to move on to other types of things, because he really is the person who has the most amount of knowledge on the platform within the foundation. So one of the things that we offered to try and free Dave up is to say that, you could ask us those questions. We do have a support email that their team can email into us. So the other thing that we offered as well is that we could sit on a weekly basis with the team and actually just listen to some of the issues or questions that they have, and maybe pivot around those particular items that we're seeing, in a sense of maybe scheduling an additional training session, or maybe scheduling some additional configuration help, or even just helping the team get a little bit more up to speed in being that system admin. So that would free Dave up from having to do those kinds of things. I always call this out because it is quite a unique skill in the sense of what Dave took upon himself. And it's kind of fun to kind of talk about, obviously when we initially engaged with Vancouver around the systems that they wanted, I don't think Dave was in the front of the line for SmartSimple, but in the end really took it upon himself to understand what the platform could do. And I really do believe a lot of that is around the success that we've had with the Vancouver Foundation. When you have clients who truly understand the power of the platform, that it's not just sometimes a simple GMS system, that it can do a lot of things for you. That's really what makes for a successful relationship. And that's just really continuing. I mean, it's just an extension of probably what we've been doing for a long time. So we don't really notice much difference in the sense of how we work with Vancouver. We still got a few initiatives that we want to complete with them. So this just allows us to couple a little more tightly and make sure that their team is able to support themselves.
And as this is a difficult time, they didn't have to go and hire the full-time body. They have, support when they need it, and it can ebb and flow as needed as well. So I have two really good questions. So the first one is to Dave. How different was the process workflow from your regular grant application? So COVID versus non-COVID.
It differed in a few ways. The biggest difference, I think, is the fact that it wasn't an application. So our form was basically just two simple questions. How much money would you like? And what do you think you might use it for? And so from a staff and volunteer advisor perspective, the decision making switched from assessing, we're usually assessing project-based grants based on a more substantial set of questions. And so the decision-making process switched from trying to find a reason to say yes to one where it was, well, why would I say no to this request? Is there such a thing as a bad grant or a wrong grant to make in this context? And so not so much in terms of the configuration, but more the discussion around who to prioritize for funding. That was a big difference for us. The second one was that this was a continuous open cycle. So usually our granting cycles have a open date and a close date. So everyone gets considered at the same time after the close date. This is a rolling request process. And so trying to we have one team of staff and volunteers reading the requests they come in, coding them with a taxonomy so that we can use the query tools in SmartSimple to quickly locate the types of organizations that we are going to prioritize. There's a separate set of staff who are supporting the granting process administratively, and then some staff are in the decision-making process. So having so many staff involved in the same granting program at the same time with very differentiated roles is a little different for us. Usually it's close teams overseeing all aspects of the streams that they oversee. So that was different for us. What else was different? The funding structure was different. So many long-standing community foundations will empathize with me when I reflect on the 90 or 100 restricted funds that we have access to. And so opening up, Malcolm mentioned this earlier, the funding structure was one of the reasons we picked, or SmartSimple's ability to handle our funding structure was one of the reasons we picked it. And so opening up new sources of funding to code against the grants was new for us as well. So
sounds like there were a lot of differences.
I guess the biggest one was how to make unrestricted operational grants based on very little written information, relying far more on the advisory panel's knowledge of who was doing what in community.
Excellent. There's another question again for you, Dave. You mentioned there's no reporting required for grantees. How do you manage accountability in that context?
So even though we haven't set up a formal reporting requirement for any of these grants, there is a monitoring activity associated with each grant. So in 3 months, maybe less, if things calm down, when people are able to take a breath, we are going to follow up with each award recipient to see how they use the money in the end. It's not so much an accountability. So the 4 partners agreed very early on that this was going to be a trust-based initiative, that organizations, we were going to trust the fact that organizations were only going to ask us for money if they needed it, and that they would deploy the funding as an unrestricted operational grant in the best way they needed to. And so if that was 100% to go to supporting clients, buying food, buying personal protective equipment, or 100% going to salaries, or 100% going to rent, it was their choice, and there was no bad choice on how to use the money. So a very different way of looking at what are the outcomes, and how are we accountable for that money, for sure. And I don't think we've answered that question fully yet.
Okay. So Malcolm, do you foresee as Vancouver thinks that through, that enhanced reporting will be needed to be built in, or do you think what was built in already will suffice for them?
No, I mean, a lot of the times we are aware that if there's some additional programs that open up, sometimes there are some pretty specific questions that you might want to get answered to based on the initiative itself. And we can leverage existing reports and then basically build in some additional questions based on the parent type of application. I mean, that's just the power of the platform that allows us to quickly pivot in those particular questions. And then obviously, if we have to leverage the power of versioning to only show those particular questions on more downstream type of applications, we could leverage that power too. So we do this a lot in terms of, obviously it's not ideal when you have to do rolling go lives during configuration, but sometimes that happens due to some necessary constraints. And this time is definitely one of those. And again, just coming back to the flexibility within the platform and our experience around that, which we certainly do have a lot of rolling go lives. We understand that we can layer in the application, and then, should Vancouver wish to turn on a reporting type of functionality within the granting structure of that whole process, we can certainly activate that when need be.
Thank you. So I think I don't see any more questions coming in. So I'll let both Malcolm and Dave give us some last thoughts, and we're all available if you want to talk to us off Zoom at some point via email or any other way. But Malcolm, I don't know if there's something you want to add, and then I'll let Dave have last words.
No, for us, this has been a great initiative for us because, we like to give back, especially working in this particular sector. It's nice, we are always working hard at enabling others to do good things. This is really an opportunity for our organization to give back and to be able to reach out and say, thanks for your support from a business perspective, and here's how we're going to support you right back in terms of everyone needs a bit of help during this time. And again, just I give thanks to our team because they put in those additional hours trying to fit these requests in within our existing work stream. And thankfully, we still have clients like everyone attending here who's been given us a steady stream of work to do. And that's just great because in turn, we keep people employed. And it was a nice way to just say thank you and to be able to give back. And I've been trying to figure out this entire presentation, how I can sit in the couch, but it's But Dave, we've worked together for so long, and we've certainly called on you to do presentations together and talk about the things that you do. And I don't think there's ever at one time where you hesitate, given your busy schedule. You're always willing to participate, take time, and help promote both the platform itself and what it can do. And we always appreciate that, both from Gen 3 Resolved and certainly SmartSimple. So again, I personally just wanted to thank you for your time and your continual trust in the work that we provide for you as an organization. So thank you.
And thank you very much. It's always a delight. it's always a delight working with people who will still pick up the phone when it's Dave calling, because not everyone does. Final thoughts about this. I think this very challenging situation has helped prove what a good return on investment we're getting from investing in SmartSimple. So we were up and running in less than 2 weeks. And in over the next month expanded, leveraged that into 2 additional granting streams. So I think the flexibility and power of the platform has become more evident to more people in my organization, which is a delight. One of the things, so back to the question around how is this different from our regular granting streams? In our regular granting streams, we tend to make decisions with a bit more time to reflect, with more information to make decisions on. And so this experience reminded me of just how flexible SmartSimple is at allowing us to look at what we're getting and think about things differently. So configuring different list views, exporting the data to Excel to cross-reference it against other sources of data is just, it's so straightforward and works so well. So we're able to think about things in the absence of the standard types of information quite well. It's inspired us to think of what would have been very helpful is had we got around to dashboards, thinking about dashboards. It's on the list. So we tend to export to Excel and create dashboards in Excel instead of doing it directly in SmartSimple. So it's got us rethinking about all of the functionality in the system that we know is there that we haven't taken advantage of yet. But what we are aware of helped us to be very responsive very quickly, and we're very thankful for that.
Excellent. So I'll just close by saying thank you. We've got over 50 people joining today, as I said, from all time zones. And just to reinforce Malcolm's gratitude to all of our clients, we kicked off 5 projects in the last 3 weeks. So we're still happily building new systems and recruiting new people. And we really are committed to partnering with our clients over their long digital transformation journey. These are not things that happen in bursts, but they're long journeys. Some of them have been, we have been working with over 10 years. So thank you everybody for making the time. And if you have any other questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us via email or in any other way you would like. The old phone, I miss calls on cell phones these days, just talking to someone without Zoom. But thanks for your time, and stay well and stay healthy. And let's hope this all gets better soon for everybody in our community. Bye-bye.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.